Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is setbacks and how we deal with them and potentially can turn them into opportunities and overall increase our happiness quotient. Before we get started though, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub those hands together to feel all those feelings, the pressure, the friction, the temperature, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Bernadette. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. It's a new week. It's really exciting to be here with you, and we're talking about setbacks. We've all experienced them, right? So a setback is what? When reality doesn't meet our expectations. You know, we're intending for something to go one way and it goes another. And what I actually want to offer up in this conversation is that the notion of a setback, it's an interpretation, right? Where literally reality isn't meeting our expectations. Good morning, Haroon. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you here joining us. Today, we're talking about setbacks and how we can navigate them in order to promote our happiness. So really, we're talking about adaptability to a certain degree. I mean, we've spoken about resilience and about how resilience can be a wonderful thing, and it also can be kind of the enemy of change, because if we can keep bouncing back, then we don't have to change. But what we're talking about here is adapting, but not just adapting to what we're talking about is managing our responses, our perspectives. It's all about context and perspective, right? So when we talk about setbacks, we're generally putting a negative spin on things. Bernadette says managing expectations. Really, that's what it comes down to, I think. You know, when we talk about, and by the way, Haroon, welcome from Pakistan. It's wonderful to have an international flavor here. That's awesome. Anyway, so setbacks. So I found a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful acupuncturist. And this woman is a magician. And so we were working on some issues, some health issues that were going on for me. and kind of getting me all in shape for my trip that I'm going on, leaving this Thursday. Very excited. And she bought a car and was unfamiliar with the car. She got into the first car accident in her life. Thankfully, she's okay, although she got really banged up, which is horrible, horrible. And she's not going to be able to work for a while. And I mean, this was like the day that she got the car or the day after. I mean, just horrible. I mean, for me, it's a setback. For her, it's just, it's a more major setback for sure. Where she got really banged up and she's going to have to take a while to recover. Thankfully, she's in a place where she'll be able to recover. You know, hopefully, thankfully, the car was damaged worse than she was ultimately. But so we talk about setbacks. And again, this conversation, like so many, if not all of the others, comes into a conversation about context. Because for me, so Bernadette says, I'm traveling too. I leave Ontario this Friday to go see my son and his family in Alberta. Oh, how wonderful. That's so awesome. Yeah, so maybe it's a good time to be traveling. I hope so. Anyway, so setbacks within every situation, within every obstruction, again, interpretation, obstructions and interpretation, within every setback, within every situation, really, we can find opportunities. And so while it may be not the way we wanted things to be, there is always a number of different ways to view a circumstance, even if that circumstance is tragic. And if that circumstance is tragic, we need to give it the honor that that tragedy warrants. We get to grieve and we get to heal and address the emotions. I'm not talking here about spiritual bypassing, which is something that many of us who are trained in redirecting our attention can readily fall into, to the detriment of our greater well-being, because we don't address the things that need addressing. So in a moment of tragedy, we may be called upon to rise to the occasion, to take care of the things that need addressing, to be in emergency response mode, and there may not be time to process all the emotions that arise out of the circumstance. Or and the thing is, that's often really appropriate, but it's important that we do give ourselves the opportunity to address the things that need addressing, because otherwise they will continue to haunt us. Good morning, good evening, Gia. Welcome. It's so good to start the week with you as well. It's great to have you here with us. Bernadette says, near future for the stage of grief for me. Can you ever be prepared when you know the outcome? So that's such a really good question, Bernadette. I mean, so many of us have been caretakers for people who are dying, or we know that there's imminent grief on the horizon. and we try to prepare ourselves. And I think that there are many, many stages of grief. And while, for instance, caring for a loved one who is deteriorating, we are trying, we're aware of what's imminent. And while their passing ultimately may be a relief for their relief, and a relief from the constant pressure and emotional as well as other demands in the caregiving, there's still a different level of grief that occurs. And I think when we talk about setbacks, again, I want to come back to this notion of context, that in our healing, we may have well, healing doesn't occur in a straight line, right? So we have these fluctuations, and it's the same conversation when we talk about the spiral of growth and transformation and change, is that we keep coming around to things that look like, oh my gosh, it's the same thing that I've been dealing with for the past 30 years, but it's from a different perspective, a different vantage point. And we could consider it a setback that when we revisit that topic or that subject, but that's an interpretation. We can also recognize that we're now at a place of deepening, that there's another dimension of experience available to us, and awareness that wasn't previously there. And it's interesting when we think about setbacks, what we're the context, the unspoken context, is that we're marching in a specific direction, like that we're going somewhere against which we can measure the setback because it's not going in that direction. And I think what happens is that oftentimes this notion of direction or outcome, it's what gets us in motion, and it may not be where we're ultimately headed, even though we think it is. It may be that these setbacks take us into... Hi, Sue. Welcome. Sue says, thank you, Mira. Looking at things from a new perspective is a different context. Exactly. It's wonderful to have you joining us, Sue. Thank you. So what we're talking about is while we may have a certain objective, it is sometimes the things that we consider setbacks that enable us either to deepen our awareness, to deepen our understanding or our compassion, to shift a perspective in a way that's really needed and enriching, or often to maybe even put us on a new path. And it was the belief that we had this path that we were on before we had our setback, or before we got diverted, that allowed us to have that dynamic of the diversion, if that makes any sense, that then reset us onto a new course. So, for instance, maybe somebody is pursuing a career in, who knows? Let's say they're pursuing a career in marketing, and then they have medical setbacks. They have some kind of condition that then they end up going down a path to deal with that condition. And in the process, they recognize that they learn all kinds of things. They've gotten educated in that whole arena. And what seemed like something peripheral, seemed like it was a setback, actually gave them a new sense of purpose. And now they go into a career or develop a career around healing and perhaps even that area where they became ill, where they experienced that quote unquote setback. I've seen this kind of thing happen so often where tragedies and setbacks have actually provided people with a sense of meaning and purpose in life in their response to that setback. So I'm thinking of a friend whose daughter tragically died from cancer. And this person went through years of deep, deep mourning and loss and lack of direction, and then came out of that and with a renewed sense of purpose and love and appreciation to be able to contribute in the name of his daughter to the world, to make his life a testament and a tribute to her. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see how our purpose in life is often through things that we would consider setbacks. Haroon, while we very much appreciate you joining us, this is not a place to be soliciting. So I just want to be clear about that. And we very much appreciate your participation here. So let's look at how the things. So another example of a setback was, let's see, when years ago I was in a job that I hated, and by mutual agreement, but unexpectedly, it became we came to an agreement that it was time to end that position, but it wasn't in the timing that I anticipated, and it wasn't, it seemed like a major setback at that time. And it required, that setback, that circumstance required me to make different arrangements, to make different plans, to redirect my focus. And it became something that set me on a path that ultimately led to where I am now. You know, it was something, it was a rude awakening at the time. And it forced me to recalibrate and to reevaluate where I was in my life and where I was going. And so while it looked like a setback, in fact, it was a reset. It moved me from one trajectory to another, or I enabled it to be a catalyst for me to shift directions from one direction that was not going to be fulfilling for sure into another direction. Bernadette says, As much as a caregiver part, I've encountered numerous times, off and on. I could not do it as a career choice. Too heartbreaking. Yes. So it takes a very special soul to be able to be a caregiver for a career. I couldn't do it either. I couldn't do it. There are certain, I think there are certain aspects of myself that are just too fragile to be able to be who I would need to be to give care to people who are dying. And I have such great respect and admiration for people who are able to do that and remain present and be compassionate and be the stewards to help people transition in their lives. It's a profound gift to be able to have that level of compassion and presence without being overtaken by it. Super powerful. So again, if we talk about context, someone is dying, and then they have a challenge, a health challenge that becomes more acute. We often talk about it as a setback, but is it a setback? Again, it's context. Maybe it's moving them closer to where it's time for them to be. I think when we look at our relationship in the US, especially, our relationship to death, we do everything in our power to avoid death. And we often prolong life without any quality, just for the sake of life, just for the sake of prolonging it, which to me is outright crazy. When someone has no quality of life, if they're in constant pain and there's no no satisfaction in life anymore. If it's, why do we go to these extraordinary lengths to put people on machines? I mean, I have a DNR, there's no way that I want to be kept alive in extraordinary measures if there's no quality. And context, we all have different notions of what quality of life is. Some of us will want just being able to be at all conscious might be quality enough for some of us. So Bernadette says, I take that as a push forward from what we once were when we don't accept the smaller signs. Bernadette says, DNR for me also. DNR, for those of you who may not know, is do not resuscitate. It's like, if I'm dying, let me die. Just let me die. And there are other people that feel like at all costs, keep me alive at all costs. But I question then, what does alive mean? Yeah. So it's interesting when we talk about setbacks, we have all different contexts for it. We have the context of I needed to go to the store and the store was closed, kind of setback, to I was on a journey and had a heart attack and ended up in the hospital. Like there are all different kinds of setbacks. And the way that we contextualize them, the way that we define them, is going to determine how we deal with them. And even the interpretation setback is an indicator of a resistance to life unfolding as it does. And when we allow ourselves to be present to life's unfolding, when we allow ourselves to move in flow with the dance of life, then the term setback kind of becomes irrelevant. So good morning, April. How wonderful to have you join us. April says speed bumps rather than setback, maybe slow us down so we can see what direction we really want or maybe should go. I love that, April. That's beautiful. What if, and this all goes back to the conversation of, and this is where I do my best to operate from, is life is happening for me and through me rather than to me. And if that is the case, if life is truly happening for me, then I don't need to resist it. I can allow whatever is emerging to be something that I then respond to and dance with. And rather than react, as you said, April, it gives us a chance to slow down and see which direction we want to go. So we can, when we respond, even if life is giving us things, it's kind of like if life gives you lemons kind of thing, make lemonade. Hopefully you like lemonade, or maybe you make lemon chiffon pie, I don't know. But the thing is that those options are available to us, where we can, even with the challenges that we're facing, yes, we address those challenges. Yes, we grieve. We don't just we grieve when it's appropriate. We don't just turn, in a moment, turn tragedy into opportunity. Maybe in that moment, perhaps we can, and really importantly, we get to address the underlying feelings, because the truth is they don't go away. They don't just go away, they get buried. So it's a both and oftentimes when we deal with those feelings, that is the very thing that is the gift of the quote unquote setback. So I guess we get to look, as always, at the context and interpretation that we create for our experience. And when we create the context that life is happening for me and through me rather than to me, even though oftentimes it feels like we're just being pummeled, then there is the capability to kind of relax into it, even if it's painful, even when it's painful, to be allowing for that. And Bernadette, thanks for being with us, and everybody else. It's always such a privilege to have these conversations with you. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please check out the other awesome programming on EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living, and Enlightened World Network. And until next time, again, so much appreciation and so